Welcome to the She Suite Society, your exclusive path to authentic conversations with women who dare to lead. So we've known each other. We've crossed paths now for a few years. And been in the same types of circles or similar circles for a little bit. I won't say same because I know you have a whole life I know nothing about, as do I. But I started this podcast, the She Suite Society, because my whole platform is dedicated to elevating women's voices. And when I thought of this podcast, the very first person that popped to my head to be like, I need to start with her. And it was you.
Oh, and
gosh. There's no better person than you. And you know what's funny about it? Here's what's funny about that thought. I thought that, right? Go with the feelings. I'm all about the feelings. Then I did my little research because you and I, as many times as we've crossed paths, we've never had the opportunity to just sit down, you and I, and have the discussion of, tell me about you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I know me. I sit with me all day, but I didn't know necessarily all that there is to you. And I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that I do. But what I learned about you. Yes, of course, you've got your accolades galore. Okay. You're accredited through the butthole. All right.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to minimize.
No,
that.
but
I know you work your butt off to get those. But to me, I'm just not one of those people that cares about the accolades. I care about you, like who you are, what you stand for, and what I learned about you.
Absolutely.
You wish to create a world in which everybody is leading with empathy and inclusivity, regardless of anything. You wish to connect everybody together in a way where everybody is celebrated.
Yes. That is me in a nutshell. That is 100% accurate. Yes, ma'am. 100% accurate.
Well, that's what I'm about. But I wasn't as savvy as you were to build a whole daggone company about it. But you did that, and I think that is just brilliant. I do. I think that's LBB Edutainment. You literally, and I got it. I researched every article there was about you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
You have not only claimed to do that, you have embodied that from what I found in the research. So that's enough of me saying who you are. I wanted to lead with, I understand you, and I understand why the universe brought the two of us together. Yes. Now what I want to understand is a little deeper than that, if you don't mind.
Girl, let's go. I'm an open book. Let's get it. Let's get it. I'm excited.
So in all the interviews that I've seen you do, you talk about, okay, you grew up in the rural South. You grew up seeing some stuff that led you to believe a certain way or understand why this is how you are. I want to understand, what age did that start for you?
Ooh, child. That's a great question, Dahlia. I feel like I just always known it. You know, I grew up in a household with my mom and my grandmother, right? So two very strong, independent-minded, hardworking Black women. So my mom and dad divorced when I was 2. And my mom knew she was going to need some help raising me and my sister. And so we all moved in the house together with my grandmother. So my mother worked outside the home and my grandmother was the stability in the home. And I cannot speak highly enough about that multi-generational way of growing up that was so important to us. You know, my grandmother was born in 1914. So I need people to really understand that piece of American history. 1914. So this is post-Civil War, heavy into Reconstruction, very into Jim Crow for American history. And this is my grandmother, right? So my grandmother lived through the Great Depression. She lived through Reconstruction. She lived through Jim Crow. She lived through civil rights. My grandmother, actually, interestingly enough, passed away in November of 2001, 2 months after 9/11. So you want to talk about a number of very important, very large, world-defining events that my grandmother went through and been through.
Yeah.
and was able to acquire that knowledge from her. So my grandma was an oral storyteller, which in a lot of the Black communities in America, that's the only way you understood and knew your history. We don't have a lot that's recorded and documented. Like I literally went on this 3-year spree on ancestry.com trying to find more about my history, and I hit so many dead ends because of the nature of the poor socioeconomic status and the ethnic makeup of my family. There was only so much that I could find. So we relied heavily on the stories that were shared and passed down, and I try to do that honestly with my kids, particularly my youngest, to say, hey, this is your lineage. You need to be proud of this. You need to know that we've come from some stock, honey, because if our DNA is still alive after the Middle Passage, boom, boom, we some strong people. Listen. And so I say that all the time, and I mean that all the time. And I feel so privileged to have had a multi-generational household that I grew up in, because it makes me a richer person to really understand people, to understand generations, to understand hardship and resilience and strength like I think nobody else honestly could understand it the way I do. And so I'm very grateful for how I grew up and the lessons that I learned in that process.
You must have seen some stuff. One of the harder, what I think is always one of the hardest things to see, correct me if you feel differently, is when you see things happen to people you love. It's almost like, all right, things can happen to me. I can take it. I'm tough. I'm good, whatever. But you touch my mother, you touch my grandmother.
Yes. Girl, it's such real talk. Something is about the South that I don't think a lot of people really understand about the South. There was definitely a hierarchy. So even if you think about, say, a 5-year-old white child can call an 80-year-old Black person by their first name.
No, ma'am.
So a 5-year-old is calling my grandmother Millie. And you want to talk about instantly making me angry, wanting to throw them bowls, as they say. I'm ready to throw some bowls. Listen, you don't disrespect my grandmother. You're 5 years old. You are not on the same level as my grandmother. There's no way you're on the same level as my grandmother.
Yep.
But that was a lot of the reminiscent places of the South, is that it didn't matter how young the white person was, they could disrespect the Black person no matter what age. And so I grew up very much in the Southern tradition of yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, to all. And if there was a person who was at minimum 15 to 20 years older than you, it's Miss Dahlia, Mr. John, Mr. Clyde. Like, you respect them because of what they have been through. And so I found that so offensive for people to call my grandmother by her first name. And it's something that still gets to me. And I moved to the Midwest literally 21 years ago, which still makes me laugh, that when people say LaChandra by name, I'm like, baby, how old are you? You're not old enough to call me by my first name. What is this? But it's such a Southern upbringing. And it's because I saw so much disrespect with it. It bothers me. And I get that the Midwest personalities, they don't like it. They think ma'am and sir are like talking about your age. And I'm like, it is due respect that you have been through life enough, that you have blazed trails enough, that you have created this legacy enough that you deserve respect. And so that is what it is for me. I am very easily to call somebody Mr. Mr. and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because you have earned that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's always this, I think, battle I have being in the Midwest where people don't see it the same way. And I really do see it as reverence and not as age, for sure.
I know. I'm the opposite, right? I grew up here, mostly in Ohio, and I moved to North Carolina for a bit.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work out in Texas and just in the South in general. Yeah. And I'll never forget when I was down there and somebody called me ma'am or miss. I was like, watch your tongue. They were like, what? And I got called a Yankee and a New Yorker more often than you'd imagine.
Oh, yeah.
But I understood. I'm a child of the world. So I understood very quickly that this is a respect thing. And I'm a believer in, I'm sure you are too, where or whomever you're dealing with, however
Yes.
they choose or wish
Yes.
to like, as long as it's always it done with good intentions, done
Correct.
rightly. You can't call
Correct.
people slurs. That's
Right.
never done rightly. That's never done with good intentions.
Right.
But if it's
Absolutely.
something like ma'am or miss, like I adapted to it real quick. I was only in my 20s too. I was like, I am not 40. And now I am 40. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't say that now.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm in my early 50s now, which makes me laugh because I'm getting closer to mid. I'm almost mid. Next year I'll be mid. I'm almost close. But it's so funny because in my mind, I still see myself as that 20-year-old, right? There's a part of you that always looks in the mirror and you're like, first of all, how did I get here? Like I'm 52 years old. How did I get to 52?
Yeah.
You still think of yourself as this young person. So even when the first time I was with some young mentees that are in their 20s, which makes me laugh because my kids are in their 20s. And they were like, oh, Miss La, they call me Miss La, blah, 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 or Miss LaShonda, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa, aren't we the same? Oh, we're not the same. Oh, I'm 30 years older than you. Oh, I aged, you aged. Okay, got it. So it's like my mind has to catch up because
Yeah.
I still will feel like this young, vibrant, world changer person. And I'm like, oh no, honey, now you're as a wise old sage. People come to you for advice as you run out to the pastures. It's
I
like,
know.
okay, I got it.
Oh, it's so crazy. I still like, and yes, all right. You got the age, you got the wisdom. You have the
Yeah,
wisdom.
yeah,
But you're right. Our mind stays young.
yeah,
Our
for
mind
sure.
stays agile and
Yeah,
stays in a healthy state. We're constantly learning and adapting.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it is crazy to me
yeah.
how our bodies betray us. Like
They betray us, girl.
okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. Then I think I have so was there any particular moment or any particular point in your I'm going to say it comes from your childhood because people
Sure,
that have life missions like this, it is something that happened in your childhood that
100%.
reframed your empathy to understand that you
Yes,
don't want others treated like that. Was there a
yes.
pivotal moment like just a pivotal story where it just clicked to you or were you just born this way?
It's so funny. Thank you for asking that question because it was a multitude of things, and specifically around oppression for Black people in the South, in rural South, right? So, I told people I'm 52, but I was born in 1973. So in the 70s, like literally 5 years after the Civil Rights Movement happened. And my mother, which is so beautiful, was a part of that movement. She was 18 years old in the early 60s, and she was like, we need to do something differently. And she was a part of a group of folks that, after the civil rights movement passed in 65 and 68, the voters' right amendments, she was able to be with a group of folks that tried to help the older Black people know that they had the right to vote for their elected officials and to do it. And because of all of the history of poll tax and violence and threats, it took two complete election cycles, which is 4 to 8 years, depending on what you're looking at, for people to say, oh, I can do this and my livelihood not be threatened. So it took a while for people to trust the system. And that was intentional, right? They intentionally made people feel like they were disenfranchised and not a part of the system so they wouldn't cast their votes. And so my mom was always this person who was like, I'm going to do this, and she came from segregated schools. My mom graduated high school in 69, and it was segregation up to that point. We didn't desegregate till 1970, right? So she only knew being with other Black people, being taught by other Black people, being in that involvement, not having white interaction other than those in authority outside of her learning. And so I just understood that coming into it, where, I grew up in a town where, the city pool was not ventured in by Black people. They had a country club in the middle of town that was for white people. The Ku Klux Klan marched every year and rallied downtown.
What?
These are things that were happening. And even my freshman year in high school, which people still blow their mind, 52 years old, freshman year in high school, we still had segregated proms and segregated homecomings. People don't get that. That was the late 80s. Late 80s. Now, mind you, segregation happened in 70, but we still had segregated events to the late 80s. And so I don't think people really understand that. And I grew up with that. And so it's not this foreign concept that's so far away. Like, it's literally in my lifetime. And so I just grew up always feeling like a second-class citizen, always knowing my place, per se. So, you know, when the Ku Klux Klan would march in town, we know you ain't getting groceries that day. You're not going to go into town that day because you want to protect yourself and your livelihood. And I remember even talking to one of my white colleagues who was one of my classmates even a few years ago. And she was like, I never noticed the Ku Klux Klan marching in town. And I said, because it didn't change any way that you would do anything. You could still go to town, you could still buy grocery, you could still do the things and not be encumbered with this delay. Whereas if I went in town during that time, I probably would be dead by now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have made it.
Sassy person, and I don't know how to not use my mouth and be vocal, so I would have been dead. I'm just gonna be real with that.
Yeah.
And so she didn't understand that because it didn't change her point of view. But what that made me understand is that you can live in the exact same place, exact same time, have very different experiences. And so that literally became my mission, to help people understand the purview that you have, the perspective you have is literally only your own, until you expand your mind and take the blinders off and see what other people are going through.
Yeah.
And that is real for everyone. And so I try to always spread that message that, like, you have a point of view. That's great because it's your point of view. But right now in this world, there's 8 billion people in the world. There's 8 billion points of view. You can't know all of them. You can't even know half of them. You can't even know a third of them. Mm-mm. So I need you to realize that and ask curious questions to find out more, not accusatory questions and act like you are the judge, jury, and everything.
So we're in 2025.
Girl.
And remarkably so, we're still having to have that conversation with a lot of people. Do you still entertain having those conversations with people that you know deep down don't give a shit? They are never going to change. They don't actually care, but they want to wear the badge like they care. They want to pretend like they're linking arms, but you know they don't care.
They're not.
Do you still have the conversation with those people?
You know what's funny? Because I like parables. You know, remember the old school parables where you tell somebody a parable about themselves and they go, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, that's you, boo. That's you. So I'm kind of like a parable girl. I kind of give an example and like, if this happens, how would that make you feel? If this happened, how would that make you feel? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Well, you understand you're kind of doing this right now? Like, so people don't like to feel uncomfortable. I literally had this conversation earlier today. People don't want to see the ugliness in themselves. They don't. And here's a reality for human beings. We are both the hero and the villain of our own stories. We're both, right? We make choices every day. We can do something good for the world. We can do something bad for the world. It's all choices. It's all within us. We have the goodness and the badness within us. It's how we choose to live it out.
It's true.
That honestly gives the pattern and the roadmap for our lives. And so I understand that. And I'm very aware of that. And I don't have a problem with somebody saying, what you did today, that was kind of shitty. And I'm like, you're right, it was. And I'm going to make amends because I don't want to be that shitty person. I want to be the good person. So I'm going to try to make better choices. But we all do it. And unless you are really willing to face that part of yourself that's kind of ugly and nasty and you don't really like it, you're not going to be able to move forward. So it's a lot of this denying that people have of them being not the greatest of decision makers that they can't come to terms with. I very easily come to terms with it, and I know that about myself, and I can welcome the criticism, I guess, of me not being my best self.
It's the unlearning. It's trying to unlearn, and it's learning that you didn't unlearn something before. Right. And now we're all faced with causing the trauma, being a part of it. I think right now, a really big movement I know a lot of women are dealing with is unlearning parts of the patriarchy and trying to help male counterparts learn
100%.
or male identifying, learn to not follow suit with the patriarchy.
That's right.
Women, I mean, it doesn't matter where you fall. We're all under that sense of oppression. I'm going to call it that because
It is oppression, and it's also a bit of brainwashing and a bit of gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
So anytime we speak up and say, "Ooh, this doesn't feel right," they're like, "Oh, here we go again. We're talking about toxic masculinity, and men can't be men, women can't be women. Oh my god!" And I'm like, "But do you understand that you were taught the wrong way from the beginning? So you're not going to really know until somebody points it out to you."
Yeah, actually, that's probably very true.
Great.
Okay. So I think I understand why that is important to you. What I'd like to understand a little bit more and dig just a little bit deeper.
Sure, let's go.
Why do you care?
Oh,
And I'm saying that because there are a lot of people that'll go through those types of situations and come out hateful on the other end.
yeah.
They're the people that resort to violence. They're the people
Sure.
that choose a different path. You said it earlier. We choose every day. We do. We choose
Every
every
day.
moment of every day. The
We
minute
do.
you wake up, you've got choices. I will argue you even have choices in your dreams, but you have choices no
100%.
matter which way.
Yes.
So why do you think you care?
Because I know what it feels like, right? Like, I know what it feels like to be oppressed. I know what it feels like to be, downtrodden, to be left behind, to be devalued. And it sucks. And I've never been the kind of person that's like, well, I suffered. You need to suffer too. You need to build some resilience and some strength. I'm like, I suffered. I'm going to tell you my story so you don't have to suffer the same way. Will everybody have their own trials and tribulations they go through? 100%, absolutely. But I don't want you to have to go through mine. If I can give you a little bit of a roadmap, a little bit of some courage, a little bit of some information to help you not go through the same things I went through, I want that, And so that's what's pressing me so hard. I think about generationally, right? I talked about my grandmother, my mother, and so I have two children, one that I gave birth to, one that I have as a bonus child from my marriage. The one I gave birth to, I very, very much talk to them every single week about, let me tell you what happened with your grandmother. Let me tell you about what happened with your great grandmother. Let me tell you about what I went through, so that they have, first of all, an understanding and a connection to what has happened and what groundwork has been made. And then I say, now you take the torch and you move further. You take it even further so that every generation after you can learn from all of us and you, right? And that's what's super important to me. Is like, I don't ever want to be somebody, I call it oppression Olympics. Just because I went through this horrible time, oh, you got to go through it too, girl. You gotta earn your dues. You gotta pay your dues. Why is that necessary? It's not necessary. And so it's always been somebody that it's been incumbent upon me to say, how can I not only blaze a trail that I can clear the brush out? I'm going to blaze a trail. Don't follow in my footsteps. Follow the path. Make your own footsteps. Wait.
We got to celebrate that line. Oh my God. Yes. You laid the path. Don't follow the footsteps. Make your own footsteps on the path.
Yes.
I've never heard that. That's so brilliant.
It's for real how I feel. And that's the thing, I think about, because I'm a bit of a risk taker. People talk about that. I love you. Thank you for that. I'm a risk taker. Like, I'm an adventurer. Like, I haven't done it yet, but this year I'm going to jump out of an airplane. I'm going to do hot air ballooning. I'm going to go four-wheeling. I'm going to do a lot of things that challenge me, that I may completely fail at, but I'm kind of okay with failing at it because I want to try it. But I think that's the thing. You got to give people an opportunity to say, I want to try this. I may not succeed at this. I may not be good at this. It's okay to do something that you're not good at. And I think we get in our heads like we got to be excellent at all these things. Guess what? I'm just trying to be mediocre on some things. Everything don't have to be excellent. And I think as a Black woman and women of color, that I think you can probably feel this too, is that we've always been taught excellence, double time, well done, all these things. And it's exhausting.
It is. It is
It's
exhausting, but we
exhausting.
felt like we had to in
We
order to
had
get a
to.
space in the room. In order to
Correct.
get our voice heard, you had to be
Correct.
triple double what anybody
Exactly.
else was.
Exactly.
Doesn't
And
it make you sad a little when you
it
look at
does
the
make me
people
sad.
that automatically got chairs at the table and
Yes.
gets their voices heard all
Yes.
because they were just the right
Yes.
had the right melanin?
Correct. And their father had the right pedigree and they had the right golf course and all this stuff. And I do say father because it really was about the father. It's not about
It
the
really
mother.
was
So let's
about
really
the
talk
father.
about it,
You're right.
right?
You're right.
And so that part, I want to change that. And it's so funny because, as you said in your earlier statement, I'm everywhere. I'm a woman about town, darling. And so I'm out and about doing things. And even when my youngest kiddo is like, yeah, oh, you're lost, kid. You're lost, kid. You lost your mom, blah, blah, blah. It's great because the reason to use my name is because I've opened some doors for you. But just because I open the door doesn't mean it's an automatic for you. I open the door for you. I know what foundation I put in your life. Now you go and knock it out of the park. Because there has to be, again, it's a partnership. It's for anything you do. Yes, I opened the door. Yes, I cleared the path. You have to step one step at a time to make the footprints. I'm not going to drag you. You have to do it. And so that's what I think is the part that people miss is that while you say I'm opening doors for people, I do, but you have to choose to walk over the threshold. You got to choose to walk in. I'm not going to force you to do that because it has to be your choice.
Who opened the door for you?
Girl, so many people. I'm that person that I always laugh when people say, oh, somebody's a self-made millionaire. I'm like, it's impossible. You can't do anything by yourself. You can't do anything by yourself. I've had so many people who have poured into me. I mean, let's literally start with my brother and my grandmother, 100%, who have always championed me and said, you can do anything you put your mind to. You go get your education, because once you get your education, nobody can take that from you. And so those are the things that I went after. My mom was the first person in our family to go to college. My mom is a first generation college student. And so when she went, me and my sister were like, well, of course we're going. My kids were like, of course we're going. And I love it because every generation gets better and better. So my mom went, my sister and I went. I was the first person in my family to get a master's degree, which was beautiful and wonderful. And I'm excited about that. And that's great. But then my kid was the first person to get an associate's degree while still in high school, graduate valedictorian. Nobody else has done that but my child. And to graduate summa cum laude from college and debt free because of their academics. So we're talking about lineage, right? And I don't say that to be braggadocious. I say it to say we cleared that path and we said, here's what you can do now because we did these other things. Now you can do this, right? And I want them to say to their kids, because my mom, my grandma, and I did this, now you can do this. So every generation can grow and be more than they ever wanted to be or hope to be because we've cleared that path from them. We've removed those barriers. And that's the work that I do every day is how do you remove barriers that keep people from having the success they want to have, knowing that success is varied, right? Your idea of success is different than mine, but I want you to fulfill all of yours as I want to fulfill all of mine. And they don't have to be the same. They don't have to be the same. And that's what I want people to understand. They don't have to be the same.
You've been listening to the She Suite Society. Remember, your seat at the table is waiting. Join us next time.